So, in terms of workforce, first we need to redefine basic skills. It's what it was 10 years ago is not what it is today. Secondly, with respect to the higher ed system, we need to have the right courses with the right content. We got a lot of courses where we haven't changed. We got the right title for the course, information technology, but the content is punch cards. Okay. And then we should rethink our dislocated worker programs. When somebody gets laid off in Minnesota, our tendency is to send them to be retrained. Whereas there are a boatload of employers that would take that older worker and see them as a jack of all trades. So instead of sending them out of the workforce, we ought to think about getting them back in. And with that, we need to be ready to change again. So whether I was talking about the workforce or exporting or innovation, changing is really the hallmark of this state's economy and something that we really need to work on and do. With that, I'm happy to answer questions about what's going on with the state's economy or anything else.
Please have the mics.
I'm trustee of a charitable trust. And we're working with 4 organizations. The Concordia School of Business, who has now started the Orphan School of Business, the Alexandra Technical College, and in Fergus Falls College, and the University of Minnesota at Crookston. They say they're doing what you have presented. Proof is in the pudding. We've been giving them some money. Are they doing it?
I go back to this slide, where 1/3 of the businesses looking either can't fill the job or it took too long. And this one, where they report persistent, I'd say no. Some, like the Alexandria Tech, that is probably the exception in many cases. The guy who runs that, the relationship that he has with those businesses, not only is he listening to them regularly, but he can change that place on a dime, which in the public sector is a pretty good feat. But I think that's the exception, and I think we really do need to work harder at making the institutions, whether it's private or public sector, much more agile and responsive to what's going on in the economy.
Have you any experience with these 4 organizations?
Well, with the Alexandria Tech, we do. I can tell you for sure that that is the shining star.
How about the University of Minnesota Person?
Not lately, no. Although I'm going to do a forum with Crookston area employers at the end of July. So I could tell you after that.
How about the Orphan School?
That I haven't.
You mentioned the intolerance that businesses have of not finding the people that they need, and then there's always the question of the taxes that we pay. I think that one of the things this club focused on, I'm interested in how the chamber impacts this, is the continuous supply this state makes of underprivileged, poor people, undertrained, because of the abysmal performance of graduation rates in the Minneapolis schools especially. Those are all people with skills, young people who have a life when they get into high school, and when they get out of high school, they've not graduated and they're doomed to a life of poverty and suffering. What can the business community do that they're not doing? And this club is really engaged in that, but I'm interested in how the chamber views that and what you can do, because that's a problem. If all businesses solve it, can lower or minimize tax risk, and also solve the who do we hire problem.
So I had 2 slides that I took out of the presentation. One of them shows the declining rate of growth in our state's workforce, and the other one shows the segments of the population that are growing, and it goes right to your point. The place that, if we want to find workers, we need to close the achievement gap, because there is an enormous human resource there that, whether you're thinking economically like a business person or focused just on the questions of social justice, it is a really urgent problem, economically and socially. So the state chamber, we, for the last 5 years, have been working with the legislature to try and change policy so that we not only give some urgency to closing the achievement gap. We think things like alternative teacher licensure, so that we have a different group of folks leading the classroom is important. That actually was passed and signed into law last year. We also want to change the state's tenure law so that we get a better group of folks leading the classroom. Everything we learned said that whether or not the kids do well, it has everything to do with the person leading the classroom. So we focused on that. We've also tried to focus on measuring achievement and results, because if we aren't measuring it, we're not going to hold anybody accountable. But it is truly an urgent problem, and we have one lobbyist who works on that full time. Thank you.
I'd like to know, you said you interviewed 250 people this year, 250
Yep.
businesses. What was the percentage of Twin City versus outstate of those 250?
In the 250 right now, about just under 100 of them are in the Twin Cities, and about 150 are in greater Minnesota.
Bill, thank you. It's our tradition as Club 9 to place a book in the Downtown Fair School in honor of your visit with us today. This week's book is Chester's Way. I didn't get through it, but I think Chester's going to learn his way needs to be his employer's way if he wants a job. We hope you would sign this and maybe jot a few words down as encouragement for the students.
Great.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bear with me, I've discovered to my chagrin that there's no VP report on the agenda for next week, so I just want to take this opportunity while I've got the mic to thank you for the privilege of serving as Vice President this year and putting up with my vain attempts for humor. Have a good week, and see you next week for installation. Thank you. We're adjourned.